I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal story and then about Weight Stigma Awareness Week and the commitment to social justice activism within eating disorders advocacy that really lives within that. So I was always kind of a bigger kid, but I didn't get a lot of body shaming. I think it's probably because I played sports. And when I was a junior in high school, though, a single fat shaming comment from my friend's mom, who I'm sure was very well meaning, set me on a path, and it started with a diet and it devolved into a full blown eating disorder. And my recovery was severely hampered by fat phobia, in particular medical weight stigma. At the same time I was being treated for an eating disorder, doctors were telling me that I should lose weight and prescribing the exact same behaviors to me that my treatment team was trying to get me to stop. I remember a doctor saying, now, don't go crazy like you did before, but you're a naturally bigger person, so your weight is something you're going to have to worry about for the rest of your life. I was in eating disorder treatment. It turns out the only truth of that was that I'm a naturally bigger person. And there's nothing wrong with that. Unfortunately, because of weight stigma, including and especially in healthcare, it took me years of damaging and dangerous doctor-prescribed yo-yo dieting to learn that. Still, my recovery was much easier than many. In addition to the privileges that I have, including as a white woman and a cis woman, I was lucky. I didn't experience fat phobia within my treatment team as way too many people do. And while weight stigma and diet culture were certainly at the root of my eating disorder and made my recovery more difficult, they didn't lead to a full relapse or prevent my full recovery like they do for so many people of all sizes. Monday marks the start of Weight Stigma Awareness Week. This is a week dedicated to increasing the understanding of the fact that weight stigma and fat phobia perpetuate eating disorders and can make full recovery impossible. And so a size acceptance and non-diet paradigm is the only acceptable paradigm if we really want to prevent eating disorders and allow for full recovery. And we can't talk about Weight Stigma Awareness Week without acknowledging its creator. Shavise Turner built the Binge Eating Disorder Association with her own resources to champion not just BED, but also for all the populations that have been left out of a lot of eating disorders community and advocacy, including people of color, higher weight people, trans and non-binary people, and those who live at the intersections of those identities. When the Binge Eating Disorders Association merged with NEDA and Shavise became the Chief Strategy and Policy Officer, it was a huge victory for all of those who have been left behind in the years when the stories and needs of thin, white, cisgender girls with anorexia had been centered to the exclusion of others. Shavise has been a tireless champion for diversity within NEDA. I am here today because of Shavise's work. And as you may know, Shavise was let go from NEDA last week, triggering myself and many others to ask for transparency into the decision and clear commitments to continue the work of centering the voices and needs of marginalized people. And while we wait and continue to ask for these things, I can tell you I spoke with NEDA's CEO, Claire Misko, personally, and she promised me that NEDA is still fully committed to centering the voices and stories and needs of people of color, trans and non-binary people, and higher weight people. And that's a promise we all need to hold NEDA to, not just in what we say, but in what they do, in their staff, and how they allocate their significant resources. As those of us working to support people dealing with eating disorders enter Weight Stigma Awareness Week, we know it can be difficult, if not impossible, to get adequate treatment, even for those who happen to be thin, white, younger, cis women, even if they come from families who have enough money to give them power and clout. So we and they must acknowledge how much more difficult it can be for those who don't have those privileges, for whom the long histories of white supremacy, transphobia, and weight stigma and eating disorders advocacy and treatment keeps people from receiving treatment and, in many cases, actually makes their disorders worse. During Weight Stigma Awareness Week and all year long, we have to continue the work that Shavise and groups like Trans Folks Fighting Eating Disorders, Now Gona Positivity Pride, and so many advocates who are people of color, fat, trans, non-binary, and other marginalized communities have been doing. For those of us who want to support eating disorder recovery, our work is to dismantle oppression in the eating disorders community and treatment. We need to be honest about things like that it's not ethical to simultaneously run an eating disorders treatment center and a weight management center. We have to ask tough questions about the cost of treatment, who's profiting, and who is left with their noses pressed against the glass. Those of us with privilege must do the work to understand all of the oppression that our privilege not only protects us from, but can allow us to be completely unaware of. Let's all here today commit to dismantling white supremacy, transphobia, weight stigma, and all oppression of all marginalized groups from eating disorders treatment and advocacy by devoting our resources to centering the voices and needs of marginalized communities. Because when the most marginalized and oppressed have visibility and access to the treatment they need, then everyone will. That's the work that NEDA and we must all commit to, not just during Weight Stigma Awareness Week, but until the work is done. Thank you.